to welcome everybody to the Tasmanian tasting this evening. Great to have you on board. Before we kind of crack into the wines, we'll do a couple of introductions. Jane, if you can just launch the slides for us, that'd be great. Firstly, obviously, myself, I'm one of the wine brokers here. We've got Jane Moore, Head of Events. Welcome, Jane.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining.
And of course, we have Andrea. So Andrea Spitka, if you haven't met her or didn't attend the Master of Wine debate a couple of months ago, I'll just do a short introduction for Andrea. She's the founder of Wine Intuition, which is a wine education and corporate events business here in Sydney. She's also an independent wine consultant, judge, and public speaker. Born in Toronto, she became a Master of Wine in 2015 and currently is the coordinator of the Master of Wine education program in Australasia. So a wealth of knowledge, and welcome, Andrea.
Thanks so much, Luke. It's great to be here.
Now, we do also have a guest winemaker this evening, which is Nav Singh. Now, Nav, as you could probably imagine, is going through vintage at the moment and is one of the busiest people in Australia. So I don't think he's quite joined us. He will be joining us in about 20 minutes or so. But just to give you a brief introduction to Nav, he's had winemaking experience at Domaine Chandon, Moss Brothers. He honed his skills in the Chateau of Bordeaux and the vineyards of Burgundy, eventually settling in Tasmania to found Domaine Simmer. I guess one of the things that Nav has been celebrated for is his avant-garde approach to winemaking, and I'm sure we'll find out much more about that as and when we taste his two wines this evening. So really looking forward to his insights as well. Just moving forward, a couple of bits of admin. As always, we've got the Wheel of Wine. Well done to Peter, who won it last week. So anyone new to the Wheel of Wine, it's basically a text-in quiz that we run in between each wine bracket. So just on the net, as you can see on the screen there, text in with your name, email, and the answer to the question. One correct answer gets you 3 entries into the Wheel of Wine, and an incorrect answer gets you 1 entry. And then we'll be drawing it at the end of the evening. And 2 pretty good questions this evening, as Jane and I were responsible for making the questions rather than Mark and his nerdy wine knowledge. So just before we kick off, just thinks it's important to always mention we love these being interactive, so please unmute at any time and ask the guys any questions. We've got the chat box, so feel free to use that, and we can get the question or the feedback put towards our experts. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Andrea, and she's going to introduce us to Tasmania and present wine number 1, which is the Hughes & Hughes Riesling.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, Luke. And it's wonderful to see you all online this evening for a look at Tasmania. And I think Tasmania is probably the most exciting wine region in Australia at the moment in terms of what's happening on the ground, the innovation that is happening. And yet, it's probably been overlooked for a long time because Tasmania as a wine region only produces 1% of the total annual volume of wine that Australia produces. So it's tiny in terms of what it produces, but it actually produces closer to 4% of the value. So what they are making is really great wine, really fine wine in many cases. And there's a lot of excitement about Tasmania because of some of the influences related to climate change, I'd say, that are looking to make Tasmania an even more promising region in the future. So there has been, in recent times, quite a bit of planting. Now, the map you've got there shows 7 different wine growing areas, but Tasmania itself only has one GI, one geographical indication. So when you buy Tasmanian wine, it usually says wine of Tasmania, and that's very much a deliberate strategy on behalf of all of the producers of Tasmania to kind of brand Tasmanian wine as one thing. And yet there are 7 different wine growing areas. They're not necessarily legally defined, but they are defined from a sort of wine tourism point of view. And that's what you see on the map there. My colleague Annette Lacey, who's just become a Master of Wine, did her research paper on whether Tasmania should actually subdivide into different geographical indications. And the vast majority of the growers on the ground would actually prefer not to at the moment. It's actually quite complicated from a marketing point of view as well. So I think this loose arrangement of sort of wine growing areas works quite well. And certainly if you're on the ground in Tasmania.
Andrea, is that sort of due to as well the small size of them too, so that, you know, they become a bit boxed into grapes from that tiny little area, whereas they might normally grab from, you know, here and there a little bit?
That was actually historically the case. There was actually a minimum amount of tonnage you had to have in order to become a geographical indication, and that has and none of the sort of wine growing areas actually met that requirement. That's changed a bit. However, they also don't seem to meet the requirements of having just a more uniform soil type or a more uniform climate. There's actually enormous diversity of soil in Tasmania, and even within the island itself, quite a diversity of climatic zones as well. And they kind of overlap amongst some of these wine growing areas. So it's not an easy legal definition to put together. And I think for most producers, it's actually been more of an interesting idea just to have it as an informal wine growing area without trying to go through all of the legal paperwork to make it enshrined in wine law. So that's why if you buy a bottle of Tasmanian wine, it'll often just say Tasmania, but some of them will actually start to also denote the wine growing area that they may have sourced the fruit from.
Fabulous.
Yeah. And pretty special picture here, vineyards going out, undulating towards the various rivers and estuaries as well. The d'Entrecasteaux channel, where the Derwent and the Huon rivers spill out, absolutely stunning scenery. I think what makes Tasmania really special is that it has a really long, dry, growing season. I mean, we think of Tasmania as cool climate, and for the most part it is, but there are some sub-regions like the Coal River Valley that are actually substantially warmer and drier. And so they actually have this chance to get really, really good ripeness levels and yet retain some beautiful fresh acidity in the grapes. So it's quite of a magical place to grow grapes. So on to our first wine, and this is actually one of my house Rieslings at the moment. I'm a huge fan of Hughes and Hughes. This is a very small batch production. The Hughes and Hughes is one of 2 labels made by Johnny and Matthew Hughes. Johnny is the winemaker and Matthew is the business brains behind the operation. But they are an absolute star producer. They make Mewstone wines, which is their main label, and then they also make Hughes and Hughes, where they are able to source interesting parcels of fruit from various vineyard sites in Tasmania and make a really exceptional wine, often using some pretty unusual winemaking techniques. And I think we see with this Riesling that's exactly the case. So this particular Riesling comes from some vineyards in both the Derwent and the Coal River valleys, and it's unusually had a little bit of barrel fermentation, which in Australia is almost unheard of. Most Australian Rieslings never see the inside of a barrel ever. And that's very much an unusual technique to employ, but something perhaps you'd see in some of the really old school producers in Germany. So this particular wine shows all of the characteristics of what you'd expect from Tasmanian Riesling, namely green apple, lime zest, floral aromatics, quite a lifted bouquet, and this wonderful spine of kind of tingling acidity that really underpins the wine. But what they've also done is they've allowed quite a bit of skin contact, not enough to give it much of an orangey color or anything, but rather to bring some more texture and some more phenolics, some more of that grippiness on the finish, and a more zesty acid line. So you end up with a wine, in my view, that's actually incredibly pitch perfect in terms of balance. One of the criticisms historically of some Tasmanian Rieslings have been that they are so dry and so steely and so kind of unyielding when they're young, because they have such beautiful natural high acidities. And what I think Johnny Hughes has done here is made a very expressive, mouth-watering, delicious Riesling that you can enjoy right now, and at a pretty moderate level of alcohol too, which is quite nice for a Thursday night. So absolutely a delicious wine from this duo.
Yeah, Andrea, I must admit, when you first mentioned a long ripening period and freshness, and ripe and freshness are two words that I'd probably describe that wine as. Is that a very typical? I know you've mentioned the kind of winemaking techniques. Is this pretty typical for a Tassie Riesling, or?
Well, I think it shows the modern face and perhaps a touch of innovation. If you compare this to some of the other Tasmanian Rieslings on the market, this is rounder. It's got just a smidge of residual sugar, not enough to make it sweet, but in my view, to make it balanced. So it tastes fruity and zesty rather than steely and nervy. And I think that's a direction that's really exciting, something that other producers will likely follow suit. Because it's the kind of place where you can innovate a little bit. You can actually make wines, small parcels of wine, and try different techniques and really get a different result, a unique result in the world. And I think this is sort of changing the face of Australian Riesling, this particular wine.
Andrea, I think it's fair to say that in general, I feel like in Australia anyway, people really shy away from residual sugar, especially in like Rieslings, and very different coming from like Central Otago, New Zealand. You do get some really dry ones there, but they often have that little bit of residual to, as you say, balance. It's not sweet. There is that, you know, that crazy acidity in there, and it brings balance and body to it. But I find that people, are still not necessarily open to that. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's sort of from my experience what I've seen.
Yeah, I think we've done a terrible job in Australia of talking about sweetness in wine as if it was the greatest evil. And then we go off and have a beautiful sticky wine at the end, or a wonderful port or something like that. And that's a kind of a hangover legacy from a long time ago. We did actually make, as a nation, quite a lot of sweet wine. Well, some of it, or a lot of it, actually on the lower end of the market. Not very well made, not very well balanced, cheap and cheerful. And people had that idea that sweetness equaled low quality, and that's absolutely not the case. I'd also argue that probably with this wine, you wouldn't know there was any residual sugar. You just perceive that it's fruity and zesty and vibrant, rather than, you know, really severe and restrained like some other things.
It reminds me of the Chardonnay story, how, you know, we have just PTSD from times where it was produced, you know, badly, essentially, and people still these days will say no to Chardonnay because of the past experience.
Yeah, I think it's pretty common for people to get burned by a poor wine, a wine that they didn't enjoy, or that they felt was unbalanced for one reason or another. But I think, you know, what we see with this wine, and probably what we're seeing in general in Tasmania, is this wonderful innovation, this sort of forward direction, trialing new techniques to bring a new face, a new facet, a new expression to a grape variety. And for me, this really does showcase that. That's super exciting. It's wonderful on its own, but it's also delicious with a wide variety of dishes. I've had this with, quite spicy food, seafood, pan-fried fish, all sorts of dishes, and it works wonderfully every time. And I've certainly brought it over to a few friends' houses as well, and they've been pretty impressed too. So
Fantastic. With that, I think it would be a good time to open the floor and get a bit of feedback. Danny, I've seen you flicking between San Francisco, a cartoon house, and now a beautiful vineyard. But more importantly, I know that you guys always pair these tastings up with some good food. What are you guys eating, and what do you think of the wine?
Well, we've got how do you say it?
Charcuterie and
Yeah.
cheese.
But we're a bit slow on the dumplings with the hot sauce. So we're a bit behind it, but it goes well with the spicy salami. It's fantastic. What do you think, Danny?
Yes. Yeah, no, I love the sweetness. This is so unusual for an Australian Riesling. So many of them tend to be on the drier side, and this reminds me so much more of the German style. Yeah, loving this.
Yeah, fantastic. Peter, what are your thoughts?
Talking about sweet things, I'm of a generation where we almost got ruined permanently by Benin Moselle.
yes.
40 or 50 years ago. And, I often use that phrase, good wine ruins the purse, bad wine ruins the stomach. The acidity really comes out with this. And for me, that's often off-putting. But when you get the rest of the wine, the fruits, the sort of the minerality, etc., it does give you a nice balance. So, normally I wouldn't go for a wine like this, but you're right. This is a really nice wine, and I like the idea of having it with some spicy food.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
I think that would work well, and as would Danny's dumplings as well. Those kind of dishes work really great with this style of Riesling.
I can definitely sympathise with the comment there, Peter. Well, in terms of kind of I guess the first wines that you experienced are through your parents, and my mum would never drink Chardonnay because she said it was too oaky. Never drink Riesling because she said it was too sweet. However, her favourite drop still is Yellowtail Shiraz. So I don't know if there's any hope on her side of the fence, but there we go. Anyway, I think that's a good chance for us to move on to quiz question number 1. Janie, if you're able to launch our slide deck again, and we can get that started. Okay, so how many Tasmanian prime ministers has Australia had? Is it answer number 1, 2, or 3? So a pretty simple one there. Just remember to text in with your name, email, and the answer. Obviously, it doesn't matter, but just don't put answer 1. Just put 1, 2, or 3 in this circumstance. I don't know if I've really got any anecdotes for this without giving away too much information. Andrea, just whilst we're on the subject of Tasmanian Riesling, would there be any other examples that you would point to as something that maybe are worth having a look at, maybe as benchmark kind of examples of the varietal, or something that you've been enjoying lately aside from this one?
I think you're a bit spoiled for choice with Riesling in Tasmania, particularly if you prefer the really dry styles, because that seems to be the vast majority still on the market. And certainly things like Piper's Brook has historically made a very beautiful and quite age-worthy dry style of Riesling. So that's one that sort of stands out in my mind. But I think every particular region or wine growing sort of area, I should say, has the capacity to make great Riesling. And the other one that really stands out is Puli wines. So they are superb. And they make both just an estate Riesling. They also make a tribute Riesling of Margaret, named after the matriarch. And that's a very cellar-worthy aged one for the cellar, I should say. Very, very steely, beautiful, long palate structure, and again quite dry. But they're sensational as well, so worth looking at for.
Yeah, certainly. Well, Pouilly Pinot Noir, we've had tons of requests on that one. Excellent. How is the text looking, Jane?
Doing well. I think we're ready to reveal.
Okay, so well done to anybody who got answer number 1, because it was just one out of the 29 prime ministers that Australia's had. It was Joseph Lyons from 1932 to 1939. So well done to any history or politics buffs who got that one. If you were wondering, New South Wales has the most with 9. So well done there. Okay, let's have a look at our second wine this evening, should we? And focus on the Ministry of Clouds Chardonnay. Over to you, Andrea.
So Ministry of Clouds is another fantastic producer. They make wines from various sites across Australia. In fact, they're actually housed in McLaren Vale, where they make the vast majority of their red wines. But when it comes to white wine, they've actually chosen Tasmania for their Chardonnay sourcing. And I think there's a very strong reason for that. There's some great plantings of Chardonnay throughout the wine growing regions of Tasmania. Some of that goes into sparkling wine base and makes some of Australia's top sparkling wines. But there is also increasingly a huge number of small producers making really artisanal Chardonnay in a very elegant, cool climate frame. And that's exactly what we see here tonight. So this is the Ministry of Clouds Derwent Valley Tasmanian Chardonnay. It's very much a restrained, pared back style, and yet because of the ripeness and the long autumns that Tasmania gets, I think you still see a lot of flavor intensity alongside this wonderful backbone of quite taut acidity. What I see in this particular wine is a lot of those lemon, flint, struck match, quite a restrained bouquet. And then the palate is also very crisp, very fresh, quite linear, but then it builds with this wonderful, quite elegant texture. And that's been a very deliberate strategy by this producer, because they really wanted to just build texture rather than have, you know, oak as the feature, which historically has been the case with Chardonnay, which has obviously polarized people. Some people loved it, some people hated it. Ministry of Clouds has really decided, no, we actually want to use some winemaking techniques to just really build a little bit more textural interest in the wine. And I think you really see that. So for me, there's this wonderful hint of a creamy, mealy texture, nougat, just a hint of sort of nuttiness, but that's mostly towards the finish. And overall, it's a very elegant, very refined Chardonnay and a wonderful wine for more sort of restrained foods, if you will. Bernice Ong and her husband, Julian Forward, are kind of really looking to make very modern styles of wine, but also wines that are incredibly food friendly. And I think you see this is really a wine that would pair well with, you know, with fish, which we don't tend to think of when we enjoy Chardonnay, particularly Australian Chardonnay.
Yeah, unfortunately, Andrea, we did have this in the fridge. However, our assistant buyer yesterday evening thought it was for him to try. So we unfortunately can't, well, Jane and I can't give our opinion on this one, but it sounds fantastic.
It is. And for me, this is, you know, it's a reasonably young wine still. it has the acidity and the structure that will reward a couple more years in the cellar. It's not a wine that should be super, super chilled either, because I think you'll lose a lot of the textural complexity and even the aromatic complexity if it's too cold. So it's the kind of wine that just needs a little bit less of that, and also can be really beautifully paired with things like salmon or pan-fried fish, or even sort of Japanese style sort of sushi or sashimi, which we don't think of when we do enjoy Chardonnay.
I'm keen to get our guest thoughts on this one. Keith, what are your thoughts on the Chardonnay?
Oh, hi. I tasted it at room temperature to start with, and I've now got it chilled. I noticed that there's a bit of a tannic bitterness in it when it's chilled down, which I guess the temperature, the warmer temperature, meant that the sugars are a bit more dominant. Where's the tannin come from?
Well, I don't know if it's tannin per se, Keith. I think it could just be the use of oak with this particular wine. Sometimes when you chill Chardonnay, the oak kind of character comes out not in so much flavor, but in that kind of tannic, grippy texture. And that might be what you're experiencing, actually.
Are they new oaks? Is it very new oaks that was in?
They haven't used a lot of new oak. They've done almost all old oak for 11 months. But yet they have done quite a bit of sort of lees work to kind of build texture and complexity. And when you chill it down to a cold temperature, you lose all of that texture. And I think all you see is just that sort of grippiness. And also a chalky acidity would be more pronounced at that temperature as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Peter, what are your thoughts on the Chardonnay?
Well, there can't be too many people on the call today if you're back to me for a second time.
You just give such great tasting notes, Peter.
This has got a very French style for me, and I do like this. I'm wondering, Andrea, how will this go with aging? I mean, it's tasting really nice now, but will it sort of develop over 5 years? Say, is it worth keeping in the cellar?
That's a really good question, because I think this is a pretty newer style to the Australian Chardonnay canon, if you will. And when you think about what will help a Chardonnay age, acidity is one of the key components, of which this wine has a lot of that. So I have some great confidence that it will reward some cellaring, particularly because it's also under screw cap. So you're getting a really consistent closure. It's going to kind of look pretty fresh, a little bit longer than the same wine under cork. I'm not sure how much it will change with cellaring, actually. It might develop a little bit more honeyed notes, a little bit more roundness with time. And I do think it's the kind of wine that will probably look fresh and linear and crisp and quite taut for the next couple of years, in which case it'll still be a very enjoyable wine. But it is more restrained, more not quite shabbily like, but in that similar kind of restrained, elegant style.
Andrea, I was curious. Obviously, this is being sourced from Tasmania, but made in McLaren Vale. Another Chardonnay that I can think of being Tolpuddle, sourced from Tasmania, made I believe up in the Adelaide Hills at Shaw and Smith. Is that a commonality within Tasmanian wine? Is there a lot of fruit that gets taken over to the mainland to be kind of created, or is that just an anomaly?
Sometimes. I mean, it's actually quite expensive, obviously, to have wineries and all the winemaking equipment. And so historically, there, especially with the larger companies, they would actually source fruit from Tasmania and either bring the fruit or bring the juice up to a bigger facility, often in South Australia or Victoria. to be made. And that's because there's actually quite a bit of pressure on winemaking facilities in Tasmania. There's not that many of them. There's a few contract winemaking facilities. There's a few wineries that have their own facilities, but essentially everyone wants the same kind of access at the same time. So there's a few companies who are doing that. And the technology exists to actually bring the juice or bring the grapes, depending on what they want to do, as long as they do it quickly and carefully. But I think the future, there will be more equipment and more winemaking happening on the mainland as the industry grows, as plantings expand.
Andrea, on that, Keith's just asked a good question. Do the grapes need to get treated or sulfured for transport specifically? And sort of how long does that take for them to get to the destination winery?
Yeah, I mean, generally they would have to have some sulfur once they've been picked, particularly because if they've been destemmed, then they are particularly prone to oxidation. If they're picking whole bunches, they've got a little bit more time. But low temperatures will help prevent oxidation as well en route. But they would like to get that processed as quickly as possible. So they might be processing it in Tasmania as juice first, then transporting the juice across to the mainland, depending on the winery and what they want to do with it. But there is a lot of Tasmanian wine made in Tassie as well. So it really just depends on the philosophy and really probably where the winemaking facilities of any given producer lie.
Awesome. Fiona, I can see your groups now on screen. That means you're ready to comment on the wine for us. How are you doing with the Chardonnay?
I'm a big Chardonnay drinker, but of these two wines, I really love the Riesling. So I love that little bit of residual sugar in it. It kind of reminds me more like of the Tasmanian ones, but also I like the Western Australia ones from down Franklin, and I think there's some strong commonalities of that one coming through. So I think the Riesling is absolutely delicious.
Awesome.
Nice. Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, it's. I just went back to it then. I think it's great.
So the last Riesling we bought was Crawford River, which we just stocked up on, which is another one of my favourites.
Fantastic wine.
Yeah, super. Worth the visit into the middle of nowhere.
Excellent. So I can see that Nav has joined us. Welcome, Nav. Good to have you on board.
Hey man, how you doing? Sorry, just the drive back from the winery, so just got back in.
Hey, no worries at all. I kind of said that you're probably one of the busiest men in, well, certainly in Tasmania, if not Australia at the moment. So no problems at all. Great to have you on board. What we'll do is launch quiz question number 2, and then we'll crack on into the Pinot for this evening, if that's okay, Jane. So let's get on to quiz question. Which of these famous actors or actresses are not from Tasmania? Errol Flynn, Rachel Taylor, or Toni Collette? So which is not from Tasmania? So just remember, text in with your name, email, and answer to the number on the screen there. And in about 20-25 minutes, we'll be drawing the Wheel of Wine. So good luck with that. Yeah, these questions aren't quite as wine related as previous weeks, but
We just thought we'd change it up a little, make it fun, make it less technical, so you don't have to have maybe don't have to have a master of wine to get them right.
Now, just whilst we're waiting for everybody's texts to come in, obviously we've tried some Riesling and some Chardonnay, and onto your Pinot in a second. Just with regards to those two varietals, what are your kind of thoughts as to where you see them moving forward in Tasmania? Is there a kind of stylistic move that producers are leaning towards, or either a winemaking technique that you're seeing more and more of?
I think it's been really exciting to see. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yep.
Oh yeah, cool. It's exciting to see there's like a lot of young producers like Johnny and for the matter of fact, like Stargazer Sam and ourselves, and I think Reggie's doing a whole range of Rieslings coming from different regions of Tasmania. there's a lot of excitement for varieties like Riesling and Chardonnay, which are made for Tasmania, because we get this amazing acidity, this beautiful sunshine. So you get ripeness, but you get this prolonged ripe acidity. So you can play a lot with the different characters that you're trying to play. So you can make a really dry style of Riesling. You can do a lot of barrel ferment. You can do some skin contact, and you can look at like some residual sugar balance with the acidity. So there's a lot to play with when you've got the opportunity to have this long ripeness happening. So you can pick it at the early stages, or you can pick it at the later stages of ripeness. And that's what the beauty of Tasmania is, that it's not somewhere where you're going to get too super warm and you're going to try to pick things too quickly. And same with Chardonnay. I think the Chardonnay certainly has got a certain style in Tasmania, which is building up. We're all about this aromatics and character and texture. And texture in Chardonnay is the key word. Everyone from the mainland is trying to get fruit from Tasmania because they know they're going to get some of the best characters for Chardonnay, from flavor profile to acidity to structure point of view. And I've personally, for me, why we are in the Derwent is because we think the Derwent Valley is made for Chardonnay. It just has got this lovely, unique flavor profile, which gets the stone fruit and spice, and then this long acid profile as well. And that's all because of the soil profile that we got in the Derwent. So there's a whole array and whole range. So there's a lot to discover from Tasmania right now. And I think that's the exciting part for even me, being a winemaker and trying all the different guys who are doing different stuff. And it's every day is something amazing coming out of here. So keep on it.
Brill. Well, I'm super excited to look at your Pinot in a second. I'm going to hand over to Jane to take the answer.
Okay, so a lot of you got this right, but it was number 3, Toni Collette. She's actually from Sydney. So yeah, I just thought that would be a fun one to throw in there. Awesome. Well, perfect. Well, let's move on to some of Nav's wines, shall we?
Yeah, excellent. I'm excited to see lots of answers on the Wheel of Wine in a second. Now let's hand over to you.
2 hours back, just on the car.
It's a nice car.
It sure is. That's the only good thing.
So now we're looking at the Rama, just to give you some context. Perhaps you could kind of tell us about how this came into fruition and what you're trying to do with this wine.
So I'll start from the start, maybe give you a bit of insight about Domaine Simmer. So we started now nearly 10 years back in Tasmania. So I was making wine in Europe, in France, in Burgundy, and we were looking to come back to Australia. And only place we could think we could do what we wanted to do was in Tasmania because of the climate condition and the styles we wanted to make. So we came about, did our reconnaissance from 2009 to 2011, and 2012 we started our winery, which was in collaboration with this vineyard, which is based up in close to Mountfield National Park in the Derwent Valley, so far west up the Derwent River. And we found 3 hectares to work within it. And we make Pinot Noir mainly, and then some Chardonnay, some Riesling, a little bit of Sablons, and some Pinot Gris. We also work with a few different sites around Tasmania, but it's only sporadic. So Domaine Simmer, the name is a bit of a story about me. So Simmer is an old Sanskrit word for the word lion. So lion is my surname Singh. So instead of calling it Singh, which is basically calling it Smith, in the old Indian tale where I'm born, we thought let's try to find some of the history behind it and call it Simmer. So Simmer is an old Sanskrit word, where the words like Simba and Singapore and everything originated from that. So as Luke is going through, this is the vineyard located all the way close to the first of the lakes, the Lake Meadowbank Lake, up the Derwent River. So basically heading west from Hobart. So you're in a really interesting little valley with soil profile of basalt and sandstone. So this got this amazing sedimentary rock which sits on top, and underneath is this amazing Jurassic volcanic rock. So that combination of this two different soil profiles of sedimentary and volcanic rock donates to a really mineral style of wines. And this is what we were looking to kind of build on, try to make wines which had lovely minerality, provides for this lovely aromatics, and also texture. So our wines are quite unique than probably anything else that you try from Tasmania. We work on a few different principles. We work on lunar calendars, so we pick everything on biolunar phases, which are on flower and fruit day harvesting. We do everything on large format demi-muis, which are 600-liter barrels, and we use a lot of amphoras. All our wines are unfined, unfiltered, and also our wines are always 100% whole bunch. So we never destem our wines. So it's the idea of trying to get the whole cluster to ferment with all the natural yeast that is there. So our production is just right at the site. So there's never ever any added yeast brought from anywhere else. It's always the yeast which grows on the vineyard, which we utilize to ferment it. And Pinot Noirs for us was always about 100% whole bunch. So we don't destem any of our wines. And this Rama Pinot Noir specifically is an amazing little mix of 5 different clones of Pinot Noir, which are planted on the site, which we harvest, and we leave it in a big fermenter to ferment 100% whole bunch. We leave it for a couple of days to start its fermentation, and then we do very gentle pigeage. So there's no other machinery ever used in our winery. So it's a very ancient way of trying to do stuff. So only foot and hand pigeage. Pigeage meaning the pressing down of the grapes. So we were doing that at present. We're just about to press our Pinot Noirs in a couple of days. So we've just been working through it gently. So we want this lovely whole bunch of aromatics to come through, and all that lovely tannin and texture to come through from the skins and stems. And that natural ferment goes through for probably 2 to 3 weeks, and then we leave it on skins for around 6 weeks or so. And then it's pressed and it goes into a large format barrel in a 600-liter barrel, but never younger than 3-year-old. So we don't want really oak flavors to be the impact of the wine, but more of something which adds as a texture profile to the wine. So it's quite unique what the site is, and especially right now where we are. It's yesterday was -4 degrees, so we are still in harvest and we haven't finished. We're still waiting for some Syrah to come through, so you can see why it's actually considered as a cool climate part of vineyards. We had a beautiful run in 2021 for our Pinot Noirs and Chardonnays, lovely warm climate, and last 2 weeks it's turned and we've got these amazing southerlies coming through, and we've got freezing temperatures. So we'll be waiting for a while before we get our Syrah and a few other varieties to come through, a little bit of Riesling to come through still as well. So that's what makes it fascinating where we are from that point.
Yeah, great. Andrea, I'm really interested to get your opinion on this wine.
Well, I love it. There you go. No, I think it's an absolutely beautiful expression of Tasmanian Pinot Noir, and very unique, very singular as well. And I'm sure that's owed to a lot of the techniques, Nav, that you're using in both the vineyard with biodynamics and prevention, but also in the winery itself. And just a really complex nose of bramble and earth and 5 spice and licorice. And it's evolving in the glass as well, which I think is a sign of great wine. You know, good wine is delicious to drink, but great wine actually shows different facets every time you kind of put your nose into the glass, and that's exactly what's happening here. Absolutely love the fresh acidity here. It's got a lot of poise, beautiful balance, lots of this wonderful, just ripe sort of red cherry, red strawberry fruit, and wonderful intensity as well. Fine tannins, it's everything you want in Pinot, very silky as well. So that texture that you're clearly seeking is there as well. So Yeah, really brilliant Pinot. Really impressed.
Thanks,
Very
Andrew.
well.
You're on the marketing team. You're good.
Very well said.
With a small caveat, I just spent yesterday as my Rhone Burgundy wine ambassador tasting a whole bunch of Moët Saint Denis from Burgundy. So I've had quite a bit of good quality Pinot in the last 24 hours, and this certainly stands out.
No, I like what you said. I think that was one of the crucial part for us. We always say is that our wines are living wines. They're alive. They always give you something every time you try it because that's what they're supposed to do. They're not about just a recipe, not an idea that has kind of come through. We talk about the side, and that's all that we want to kind of portray through. So all about 3 hectares are pre-divided, and all of them are done in a very Burgundy format. We always make a singular wine from that same site every time. We do not blend anything in the winery. Once it's harvested, it's donated to that wine. So the Rama Pinot will always be the same 6 rows making the same wines. So you can really see the journey of that wine come through from each year, how it's kind of evolved and what's happened in that year and what's happened with the climate and the vintage.
It's an amazingly well-balanced, complex wine. I guess I've spent a lot of time around Pinot, but 100% whole bunch is not something you get very often, especially in New World regions. And I'm just amazed at I'm just amazed at that wine. It's amazing. And I'm just wondering, like, what kind of aging potential that you see on that, especially with that added complexity from all of that whole bunch and the nice balanced acidity.
So aging is quite unique. It's the 2 crucial points which we require for aging is good acidity and tannin profile, which are the phenolics that you get through. So if you got those in your composition, then you can age the wine as long as you want it to be if those 2 are in balance. And that's why we always work out, like our wines are between 12.5% alcohol. So we don't reach for high alcohol wines. And there's always great acidity. We always try to pick it much earlier because we want the aromatics of the wine. So this wines with the tannin structure of using 100% whole bunch and having the time on the skins and stems, you've got the structure behind it. But because we don't work on too much extraction and trying to get too much tannins added on from barrels and so the wine is actually really, even though it's 2 years old, it's beautiful to drink right now, but it's got 15, 20 years to age on, and it'll become more briny, more kind of brambly characters and more earthy and more interesting complex flavors will start to develop. So the wines from 2013 we tried just 2 months back, they were just looking as fresh and lively as what we have tried. And that's kind of 7 years now down the line.
Nav, I'm just picking up on a bit of a fight going on in the comment section between
yes, I like that.
Kiwi Pinot lovers on
how I look. This is how I look when vintage. This is my beard. This is vintage beard. So don't have to fight about that. I can be pretty smooth otherwise.
Before it got very much heated about the merits of Kiwi versus Tassie Pinot. Keith asked a really good question about the kind of raisiny nature. I don't know if raisiny is a correct word, but I'm going to use it anyway. And asking whether you dry any of the fruit before fermentation.
No, there's no drying. It's just, I think the element of that raisiny thing is it's more towards a complexity, because I think a lot of people are quite used to seeing just the fresh, lively fruit of Pinot Noir, which is just cherries and so. But in the Devon Valley, we find this really fascinating element of rhubarb and cherries, and then this really Satsuma plum thing which goes through. And when you work it with 100% whole bunch, you get this aromatics and then this real complexity that is where it's heading towards, which can easily be donated to a mix of being dried fruit, but it's actually a mix of earthen and that real rhubarbs and cherries as a mix. And I see it with our wines every year, especially with the Rama profile. So this vineyard is 32-year-old block. And when you get that age in behind this wine, it's just really complex. And that's the complexity that we are always like looking forward to.
Interesting. A question that I had, Nav, was, we talk about Tasmania being a cool climate, and obviously your winemaking techniques and I guess ethos are in many ways designed to be a great expression of terroir and really preserve what you have there. And I think this question gets brought up almost in every tasting, but certainly the regional tastings, is the effect of climate change. Have you seen differences when you've from vintage to vintage from when you've started in Tasmania, or are people talking about what climate change is going to be doing to Tasmania?
We planted Syrah where we
I was
were.
going to say, yeah.
So it's 5 years back, it was been Syrah planted now, so which we're making second year of the Syrah, so which looks fascinating. But definitely, I think we've seen from 2012, this year and last year was finally going back to the same times as 20. So which is, we start harvest towards end of March for sparkling around the Derwent, and I pick our Chardonnay around that time. And then we go towards end of April, May. So which is what this year's been. But prior to that, from 2016, 2017, 2018, pretty much 2019, we were picking early March. So for nearly 3 or 4 years, we were looking at early harvest of early March. And we were just trying not to pick in February because we've never picked in February ever in Tasmania, in our parts. So that was the scary part of seeing that, how it's changing and how you're picking much 3 to 4 weeks earlier sometimes. But slowly and steadily, it's just the changes that are happening. So we've definitely seen much more sunshine hours. We're seeing things ripen earlier for us, and we're picking at least a week or two earlier since we started in just a space of 10 years time, exception to this year. But even this year, we were actually thinking it would be slow, but we actually were 4 days before last year, which was probably back to the norm. So it's definitely warming up, and we can see some amazing Syrahs to be coming out from Tasmania as well. So look out for them.
Brill. Excellent. Let's get the let's open up the floor once again and get people's opinion on wine number 3, should we? Keith, I know this has been a wine that I've sent you in the past. After having a second look, what are your thoughts?
This is good. I'm really enjoying it. The fullness of all of those different streams of Pinot Noir you've got in there, and the balance between all of those clones, is delightful. It's fresh, it's light. I do wonder though, the comment about aging, that I'm getting the distinct feel that nothing ages under Selborne like it used to age under Cork. And so we have to change our paradigm and the way we think about the aging of wines completely. So I have no idea. I think this will be bright and cheerful and friendly for another, 10 years because of its Selborne, not and that stops things, that slows things down. But yeah, this is good. There you go.
Thank you. Yeah, that was great. I'm gonna pick on Fiona again. Seem to be getting a lot of love on this one. What are your thoughts? As good as a Kiwi or not as quite?
If you're thinking about a valley Pinot Noir, but they're quite different. No, we really like this, and it's really interesting because Marguerite, my daughter, is just coming into the wine thing and just starting to, a few years ago, why are you drinking this shit, Mum? And not Pinot Noir, just any kind of thing. And now she's fully on board. But I loved the first sort of sniff. I'm going, this is too light for me, and it is constantly evolving in the glass. And I think that's that's really beautiful. I think my last sip I had was a while ago. You can still taste it. It really runs through. But we were having a bit of a discussion here because my friend Simon, who's just come back from the Napa Valley, makes Stelvins and makes screw caps. So we were just thinking about whether or not we wanted to have a conversation with Keith about the longevity of wines and whether or not you should put them under cork or under screw caps. So I don't know if some of you want to say something or you just want to back away quietly.
I'll back away quietly.
Oh, that's a shame. That's a shame, Simon.
Simon, don't do that.
I can say a couple of things. So two things. One, I've just been living around Napa for the last 6 years, and I really enjoyed California Pinots, but they were much bigger, bolder. Some of them are almost Cabernet style, particularly the ones I was associated with. So this one here is quite delicate and balanced and quite smooth. I'm not getting that same earthy, overpowering earthiness that you can get with Pinot sometimes, which I like sometimes, but this one is exceptionally smooth. On the screw cap front, which I guess you guys are all interested in hearing from me, but look, I've been doing this for 16 years, so I've seen quite a long history and an evolution of screw cap versus cork. So we never engage in the whole screw cap versus cork. But what I can tell you is that there was some wine put under screw cap in the late 70s, early 80s, which was opened 20, 25 years later. And it was fresh as a daisy. So certain wine styles, particularly if it's fruit and fresh, are really, really conducive. But, the last 10 years has proved that even wines that mature over time. I had a bottle of 2008's and Hugo's about a month ago under screw cap. It was mind-blowing, amazing. It fully matured. So, I can go on and on for a long time, obviously.
Well,
there's a place for cork. Most of the wine I drank in the Napa was under cork, so I'm happy to drink whatever wine is good.
I think for us as Domaine Simmer, why we chose to be on screw cap is very simple. It's quite a simple idea behind it. I have not found anything less than 8% of cork taint. We do analysis every time, and for me to lose 8% the production we do when we have only 1 barrel sometimes and 2 barrels of wine, and we lose 8% of the production due to cork taint, it just do not make any business sense. And that's the prime kind of consensus behind it. But at the same time, we're always looking for better closures for our wine.
Don't look any further. You're good. You're good.
Well, I know that Danny is slowly making his way through all the Wessex courses. Once he gets up to Master of Wine, and Andrea, you're marking a paper with the question, what is better, cork or Stelvin, and he uses Nav and Simon as a reference. We can use this tasting.
Absolutely, and I might have written a paper like that in my exam journey at some point. So I've got lots of opinions about those about closures in general. But I am full agreement with Nav in that we've lost too much great wine because of closure issues, and that's I think an unacceptable loss when it could be prevented.
I have to say, after working in restaurants and things, I've seen people often say the percentage is low, but just anecdotally, I've seen so many $400 bottles have to get thrown out after you open it, and it's always so heartbreaking. So I completely understand those points of view.
Anyway, I think that's a nice chance for us to move on and spin the wheel of wine, which is an exciting part of the evening as always. I'm just going to share my screen. So it looks like, Jane, we got a lot of people with 2 correct answers.
It's almost as if the questions were easier this week.
So good luck, everybody. I'm just going to give it a spin now. Fiona, nice.
You know what? That was definitely Kiwi bias in there. Just kidding. Just kidding, Alison. Just kidding.
You go, Jane. You go.
Fiona, as always, we need you guys to give a nice toast, if you could.
You go. Hang on, we need wine for a toast.
Oh my God, I don't remember this part. Have we done this? I think last time we did this, Daryl put the wrong number in, and we were going, why didn't we win? And why didn't you put our things in? What am I toasting to? Give me a clue.
Toasting to $50 worth of credit for United Cellars, which is also exciting.
Oh, all right, you know that we'll be spending it, Luke, because we always buy the wine. So there'll be definitely something coming. Poor old Daryl is is stuck in traffic coming back from a meeting, so we've had to keep him a little glass of something. But
I've come off the bench. It's good.
yeah, as soon as you but thank everybody, it's been lovely. So thank you, Nav and Andrea. Like, two gorgeous wines. I'm really looking forward to going into the room for the next one, which of course we are. So definitely we'll be getting some of this Riesling because I think that's adorable. And can't wait to see what the next Pinot Noir is going to be. Oh, I'm actually not sure what the next one is. I know it doesn't say what it is on the label. Looking forward to the next red anyway.
Brill. Excellent.
Definitely Pinot.
Cheers.
Hey.
Thank you for that, guys. Well, on that note, that's the wrap up for the 3 wines this evening. Of course, if you've picked up wine number 4, the breakout room wine, we'll get into that one a second. This week, because in actual fact, most people have bought the 4th wine, we're not going to do a breakout room. We're just going to stay in the main room here. If you haven't brought that wine, feel free to join us. We'd love to keep you on board. I'm finding the conversation very interesting. So if you want to stay on board, more than welcome. I should say, if you were interested in revisiting these wines, as you can see, they're all up on the screen there. As always, just text in with your name, wine and quantity. We'll send out a text tomorrow morning as well, just to ask if you're interested. If you have a broker here, just get in contact with them. So that's no problem at all. Now, that is a really great image because I think it leads us quite nicely onto wine number 4 and these, as they're called, the amphora. Nav, perhaps you can take it away from there.
Sure. So this is the exciting part of, as winemakers, we get to do lots of fun during winemaking. So these are our little white clay amphoras. The clay comes from 3 different parts of the world. It comes from Normandy and Dover and India. It's a white clay and it's a porous egg-shaped amphora. So we're going to try, hopefully, the next wine as one of our amphora wines. So this is us just cleaning those amphoras outside at the vineyard, outside the winery. And they are 800-liter amphoras, magnums they're called, and an amazing vessel to ferment wines from the very ancient ways and create something completely different to what you've tried in your normal times. So the way we do our amphoras are quite unique. Again, it's 100% whole bunch. It goes into these eggs as whole bunch, and then it ferments in it. And the specific shape of this amphora, the egg shape of it, it's what creates this real character about itself. So it creates this convectional current inside the amphora, which starts to bring, as the heat rises due to the ferment, brings all the fruit from the top back down. And it creates this movement, which you do as a pigeage or plunging or pump overs in a winery, but we do it automatically in this. So it's a pretty slack way of doing winemaking, but an amazing way to see what the wine does by itself, where you don't have any intervention. So it's a minimal intervention of winemaking. So this is Pinot Noir, which you're going to try, which is harvested on a fruit day, Lionheart Pinot Noir. So 5 years back, we thought, let's do an experiment where we wanted to talk about where we get this whole lunar phases and the concept of biodynamics, which is mainly for us, lunar elements, changing the wine profile and structure and character, which we all talk about in biodynamics quite a lot. So we chose to pick 2 wines from the same vineyard, from the same clone, on an alternative lines, picked 2 or 3 days apart, one on a flower day and one on a fruit day. So this wine we're going to try is the Lionheart, picked on a fruit day. So, which basically means that the energy of the plant is more concentrated towards the fruit. So energy, what we means is that the water content. So due to the lunar phases and due to the tidal movements, the water content in the plant moves at a different part. So it's broken down into 4 different facets. It's root day, leaf day, flower day, and fruit day. So root day is when the more the concentrations over towards the root. So we use a good time to do the pruning because you don't lose much of the sap flow. On a leaf day, it's more about photosynthesis. And on the flower day, it's more about the pollination. And on the fruit day, the concentration is more towards the fruit. So we're trying to kind of use that chemistry, which is in the plant, and then ferment it naturally to get a derivative characters and flavors of the wine. So I know it sounds a bit complex and a bit kind of ruddy and stuff, but the basis of it is that we're trying to utilize a non-intervention method to make a wine on a certain day of the phase of the lunar moon, and then see how that wine ends up being and what its story and journey ends up being. So flower and fruit day, generally it's in a calendar, lies 2 or 3 days away from each other. So we pick the same blocks 2 or 3 days away. And this one is an expression of the fruit day wine of Pinot Noir done in an amphora. So no oak involved, just natural ferment, pressed, put back in the amphora, aged for 18 months in the amphora. And after 18 months, we put it into a bottle and we bring it out and we see what the characters of it come through. So a lot of wine, biodynamic and winemakers make wine in that format, but we wanted to give you the full journey. And then this is the journey of the fruit day harvested amphora wine. Hope
Amazing. Yeah.
Maybe it was a lot of information. I don't know.
No. That was very interesting. And I'm curious with the amphoras you mentioned, it does a lot of the work for you, so to speak. Why is it that they're not used as commonly in current day for wine or things like this?
I think they're getting more and more popular. There's lots of wineries now using amphoras or similar shaped things or things which are done in a concrete or a natural earthenware, because they're starting to see it's a good blending option for them. But for us, the main reason was that we want it to be a breathable vessel. So this amphora, because of the white clay, how it's been put together, it's a breathable vessel, just like a barrel is. So you get oxygen coming in continuously through it, and it's a porous, so you get all the yeast is getting real excitement because of the oxygen coming in. So they're giving a lot more character, a lot more flavor, and all of that movement and the oxygen coming through is giving us a whole different composition of chemical compounds and flavors through it. And that kind of ancient working with understanding of the science of it gives us a real kind of character for wine, which is very unique to that terroir. You cannot replicate it somewhere else because it comes from that site. You're basically using the yeast, which is coming from that place, and you're fermenting it in a way like earthenware, which kind of works through. Sorry, guys, my battery is about to die, but I'll put it on charge, so 5%. But it's kind of the idea of trying to give a sense of place and the terroir more of a future story for it. And that's what for us was the basis of understanding and learning from what that vineyard had to give us. And amphoras was the best way to show it.
Danny, what are your thoughts on the amphora?
Sorry.
This is amazing. I'm getting very distracted here.
It's
I
wonderful.
love this one. This has got a lot of complexity.
It's beautiful.
It's much less. The first one was very cherry fruit forward. This this has got a lot more balance to it.
Yeah, I love this. Good to have you on board, Daryl. Nice to see you.
Hi, Daryl. You made it for the last wine.
Well, I'm on to the third one. I'm just catching up. I'm doing a really.
We're pouring it down his throat.
Well, Fiona, I saw that you put a nice comment in for this wine. Are we holding up against Kiwi Pinots now?
I have to say that you finally
Good.
You're in the ballpark. So
That is a huge compliment.
But I don't think the winemaker's quite as cute as Sam.
Oh, that's a bit rude. That's pretty hot. Check him out.
Oh,
I'm
He
just,
missed the photo of Nav on the bar.
That's right. You didn't see
Yeah.
him on the what are it, Range Rover.
I'm,
Land Rover.
I'm just starting on the best one, I think. So that's fantastic. So
You know, that's what I was saying. It's a vintage beard. We can't shave it till next week when I'm hoping that we pick the Syrah. So yeah. And I'm glad you like the wine. It's as different as it could be from a Kiwi Pinot, but it's amazing how it kind of brings lots of different characters to it.
Nav, I'm interested. Would you obviously that we're drinking a Pinot, would you do the same techniques with Syrah or a white wine? Or
Yeah, we do actually. We do make a wine. It's part of our Amphora range. We make a Riesling it's a skin contact Riesling, which we make, which is done in an amphora. And it's a tiniest production and just gets sold out pretty quickly. But it's done in the same way as a red wine would be. So it's the same vineyard as our main Riesling, but it stays for 4 months on skins in the amphora and then pressed and goes back into the amphora for another 15 months or so. So that's a really fascinating wine where you see a complete two different elements of a real purity of Riesling from our side, and then a real textured Riesling where you start to see a lot of that beautiful phenolics and characters and honey and the richness that you get from a Riesling, which you wouldn't imagine otherwise if you wouldn't have skin contacted by wine.
Andrea, we've had Peter Fraser from Yingara on the tastings before, and I think he uses them for I believe for some Viognier that he makes. Are you aware of any other winemakers or wineries kind of championing this technique?
I think, as Nav said, it's sort of the favorite new toy of a lot of winemakers, not just in Australia, but also in New Zealand and certainly in France as well. So this experimentation with amphora and with clay vessels is set to expand, I think, because of the really unique flavor profile, but also the texture that these vessels seem to bring without the interference or the artifact that you might get from using oak sometimes. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that coming through, and they come in all sorts of fun shapes and sizes. I hadn't seen ones quite as large as yours, Nav, actually. Really large amphora. I don't know how you managed to get them in and out of a winery to clean them, and I do wonder what cleaning them is like as well.
I'm just skinny enough to get from that top bit. That's about it. So yeah. I'm hiring some kids next year. So yeah, look out, OHS.
It sounds like, Andrea, it's a bit of an old toy made new again, because it's one of those. It's almost like fashion. These things come back in after a certain amount of time. So really cool to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they're becoming slightly more widely commercially available as well, which has probably been historically the issue. There was probably more limited production and limited export of these types of vessels into more recent times.
Nice. I can see Anthony's joined us. Is it the amphora that you've got in your glass there, Anthony?
Unfortunately not, Luke. I didn't get my distribution. I must talk to someone there at
Yeah, you should.
No, but I do want to say that those amphoras look amazing. I was saying that to Lisa that it'd be 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. I remember being in Bordeaux and sitting down with Alfred Tesseron, who was telling me that he made his amphoras out of the clay from the vineyard itself, having the granites and the rocks in there, and that whole thing of encapsulating the wine from where it was created in the earth that it was made. So it sort of brings it all back together again. And certainly it makes, he was saying, part of this sustainability and organics, that it really does bring everything back to Mother Earth. And I think when you look at that with Stelvin, we're really capturing what is in the ground and, everything that comes from it. So well done. They look amazing. I was thinking it was a little bit Easter Island. So we were looking for the spaceships to take off and Elon Musk to land somewhere in the neighborhood. So
yeah, I always win my Easter egg hunt every year because they are great for that.
Yeah.
Well done.
Well, Nav's still on the Land Rover rather than the Tesla in the vineyard. So
Early days, Luke. Don't lose sight of the solar panels on the roof.
excellent. Nav, did you have any kind of final comments that you'd like to give us with regards to this wine or any of the Domaine Simo wines at that?
I think it's been an amazing kind of forum to kind of bring this through, talk about Tasmania, come and discover it as much as possible. Come and visit us over here. It's an amazing island. Everyone's super hospitable. Also, I'll do a little kind of knock in. We've got a special little cellar door right in town in Hobart, where we also do our gin tastings. It's called Institute Polaire right in town. And come and see us, and we do a whole range of tastings up here for our older kind of vintages as well, and our new vintage wines. And we do a whole range of cuvées. So we're a bit silly. We don't make just 3 or 4 wines. We make around 20 different wines, and they all have a unique imprint about themselves. So and plus, there's so many more exciting guys. And what you've touched on Hughes and 3 other guys there. Just so many other producers which are doing amazing stuff in Tasmania. So Tasmania is certainly the shining light for exciting, cool climate wines. And well, there you go. That's us.
I found it.
That didn't take long. That's pretty good rate. So that's just right in town at the waterfront. And that's our little cellar door. And you see me and my wife, Louise, who's actually the main person behind doing and everything. I'm just more the creator. She's behind all the design and the label and the creation and the story behind everything. So I just go and fluff around with more and talk a lot. But it's exciting time for us. And 10 years back we were lucky to get there at the start of the whole phase, but there's so much more to happen, and there's some of the best vineyards in Tasmania are still to be found. So it's an amazing journey to come in and enjoy with us.
No, I'm not ready.
Awesome.
Is it?
You're on mute. You're on mute. They won't unmute you.
No, she's not on mute. We can hear her. Don't say anything bad.
They just drag me down, Jane.
Wait a minute, mansplain, Daryl.
So is it just shop in Hobart that we can come to, or can we come to the actual vineyard?
Yeah, you can come at the vineyard as well. It's a bit isolated. It's an hour and a half away, and then it's a 20-kilometer drive on a dirt road. So before you get there, so it's I try to say that if you're getting a hired car, they probably won't be excited about it. But
4-wheel drive.
But
do you have to disclose?
We're always there, but most of the other time we're not that much. But if you make a time beforehand, we're always happy to have you there. But that's why we kind of set up ourselves in the town, because it's just so much easier for everyone to access our wines and our gins and rest of the stuff over there. So
when's Mark coming to visit, Nav?
He's coming on Sunday, but I just found out from Lou that Sunday's a public holiday, so it'll be just him by himself in the bar.
Oh.
So it's perfect.
I'm sure he won't mind that.
Oh, definitely not. No.
Excellent. So as you can see, there's the 4th wine there. So if you're interested in having a revisit of that one, we do have it available, and obviously would love to help you out on that. I'll just touch upon our next online tastings firstly. Next week, in a couple of weeks, we've got the Loire deep dive, which should be really, really interesting. And then after that, we've got the Rhone tasting on the 20th. So both, jumping into France and exploring some wines from different regions there. Finally, we've got International Chardonnay Day on the 27th. So similar to last week as the Malbecs, we'll be exploring some nice Chardies. So if Chardies your thing, then we'd love to see you there. Moving on into face-to-face tastings, if you guys are Sydney based or would like to come and visit, we'd love to see you. We've got Tuesday tutorials on the 1st of June, desserts and fortifieds. Naturals and organics, quite a relevant one for this evening on the 6th of July. And then just launched this evening, we've got a Torbrek release dinner, which I'm just going to hand over to Jane and she can give us a quick lowdown on.
Sure, I'm really excited about this event. So as you can see, we're hosting at Bentley, which is an amazing two-hatted restaurant. We've been working together with Torbreck on an amazing list of wines that's really never been tasted together before. And we've got some really cool opportunities to try a couple of wines that haven't been released yet. The Laird is releasing on the 1st of May. And then we've got Runrig coming up in July. We've got a couple of new Grenaches with Hillside and Les Amis. And we've got a cool little back vintage Runrig to try alongside the new vintage. So it's going to be an epic event. So if you are interested and can join, please let us know. But yeah, or reach out to your broker. But yeah, any questions?
I can see that Pete's waving.
Wait, is it Wednesday?
It's the Wednesday, the 16th of June, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you, Danny.
I was about to say I had two things to correct you. Yeah, I was going to say it's Wednesday because that's our wedding anniversary. So I know that date pretty well. And thank you very much for organising that on the week that we're out of town celebrating our wedding anniversary.
Oh,
Change
sorry,
your
Peter.
plans.
It was, yes, thank you, Danny. It is Wednesday. I'm sorry to hear that, Peter. I mean, where are you going? Is it that important? Could you stay for it?
We're taking our whole family up to Hamilton Island for a week.
Oh, that sounds terrible. Oh, that's a shame. That's a shame.
Well, I'm pretty sure that we can ship wines to Hamilton Island, so perhaps we can.
I'm sure there can be a shipment sent up to Hamilton Island of the Laird and a few others.
Great.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, I know that Nav, you're probably absolutely, exhausted after the day of harvest that you've had. So thank you so much for taking the time. I think I can speak on everybody's behalf, and everyone's super impressed by those wines. So thanks very much.
Thank you, guys, and thanks for being part of it and having our wines in it. It's amazing to have kind of a chat and be part of it during vintage. Next time we can do it at the vineyard, so that'd be great.
Exactly. And Andrea, your insights are always, very much appreciated. So thanks for your time this evening. Hopefully, we will be seeing you soon.
Yeah, thanks very much, Luke. It's been a lot of fun tonight, and I always enjoy looking at Tasmania, and I'll certainly be taking Nav up on his invitation to visit.
Exactly. So if you guys want to finish off your drinks on the Zoom call, Jane and I are going to stick around. If not, hopefully we see you soon at one of the online tastings or the face-to-face ones, and enjoy the rest of your evening.